welcome to the Women's March on London. In planning this event, we wanted to capture many voices, all voices. All too often, the voices of those who speak the loudest dominate. But it is the next generation, those who do not have the power or influence to speak out now, who will inherit this world.
Jürgen Habermas wrote The Structural Transformation of Public Sphere in 1962 to discuss the relationship between the public opinion and the state. Habermas especially suggests that everyone has the right to speak and be listened to. However, there are feminist critiques towards the concept, as Habermas considered that 18th century French court is the ideal public sphere. How could it be a fair public sphere when the women were excluded? The example of Women's March has challenged the concept with the use of social media. Women's March has been organized global-widely to express their opposition to Trump's presidency. On January 21, 2017, close to 100,000 protests have marched on London.
Remember, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. 200 years of brave activists who fight for the rights we have today. Let's pledge today that we will protect those rights.
Please know you were part of a phenomenal day where London stopped to hear women's voices.
And then on Wednesday, when I woke up and I found out that Donald Trump had won, I was incredibly upset. So I cried the whole of Wednesday. I cried the whole of Thursday. And then I woke up on Friday and I thought, well, you know, I can cry for the next 4 years, or I can do something. And by Friday night, I'd heard about the Women's March that was being organized in Washington, D.C. And my first initial instinct was, I have to be there. I have to go. And then by Saturday morning, I woke up and thought, actually, maybe we can recreate something like that here. Maybe we can start something like the Women's March in London. And I took to social media and very quickly found a handful of women who I'd never met before, and connected to them, and jointly we agreed to form the Women's March of London Collective and organize a march here in London. So awareness. We wanted to raise awareness of the importance of equality. We wanted to raise awareness of the importance of women's rights, and we felt that we achieved that. We were on BBC, we were on Sky, we were on the radio, on television, we were in newspapers. You know, months later, people are still talking about the march and questioning the way that society is run now. The second thing we wanted to do was to move people away from the cushy place of sitting behind a computer and just using social media as a way of engaging politically, but really not engaging very much at all. And we wanted people to take to the streets, to connect with their neighbors, to connect with their community, to initiate change, in a tangible, real way. The march was really there to inspire and empower, and I'm sure that there are young girls who attended the march who never thought that they could be Prime Minister, who never thought that they could make a difference, and will have walked away from that experience knowing that they can. I think for a campaign like the Women's March on London to be successful, we're a grassroots movement, we needed social media, and social media forms a part of how we build the movement, how we grew the movement. But I think our success really relied on the fact that we took lots of other different channels to make the march happen. So one is that we liaised and worked closely with the press and rose awareness of the march through getting interviews to the press and working closely with them. We also met a lot of organizations face to face. So organizations that supported us from very early on. And I think over social media that wouldn't have been possible. We really needed to establish that personal connection. And finally, the march itself. was really about stepping away from social media and going out on the streets and connecting to people who felt the same way that you did, and being there in flesh and blood, as it were, and marching the old-fashioned way. It's really a sign of what's wrong with our society, that we need to use social media to put others down, or that we need to use social media and hide behind anonymity to send out negativity, or to send out, sexist messages, or to silence women. I think that's one of the things that I really noticed. So, we got a lot of, women in the West should be grateful for what they have. They shouldn't be marching. Why are they marching? They could do what they want. It's really women in the Middle East who are suffering under sexism, so stop complaining. Be quiet. And I think, no, actually, there isn't equality yet. We're, making progress, but we still have a long way to go. We will not be silenced. And I think it's just fear. I think mainly men, but also some women, fearful of the power that other women have, and it's interesting to see how that's going to evolve as the movement, like Women's March on London, continues to grow.
Remember that women have a long history of being at the forefront of fighting for equality and justice, as we are the ones who suffer the worst consequences of irresponsible men in power. We will not let bigotry and hatred overcome us.
We are more than we are. We are one.
We are more than we are. We are one.
We are more than we are. We are one.
Historical argument when it comes to this kind of public sphere has been discredited. I think it's worth looking at feminist critiques, such as the critique by Nancy Fraser, who also attacks some of the sort of like idealist conditions of the public sphere. So according to Fraser, Habermas's understanding of critical rational discussion puts a lot of emphasis on masculine characteristics of discourse that is much more competitive rather than nurturing, and also his conception itself of what is public and what is private, again, in a way tends to be quite sexist. Well, there has been much discussion about the potential of the internet to sort of formulate an ideal public sphere, and according to research, this is not actually the case. So if you take the ideal conditions of a public sphere in terms of universal access, the digital divide actually shows that not everyone has access to the internet. So this is the first thing. In terms of critical rational discussion, what we see is that while the internet may allow for more information to spread, that information is not necessarily based on truth and on reality, and it's not necessarily of the best quality. So there have been conflicting views about whether the internet is actually allowing this kind of public sphere to flourish. It doesn't mean that it's not important for politics and for activism, but I think it doesn't fulfill the ideal conditions of the public sphere model. So if we take the Women's March as an example, and I participated in the Women's March myself here in London, what we see is that social media allowed for very quick organization of marches all around the world. And it brought a lot of people to the streets. Timing here is very important. The call went out at a time when there was a lot of concern over women's rights, and still is. So it brought people together, and it was a collective expression of, anger at what's going on. At the same time, it doesn't mean that through social media you can build a kind of sustainable organization. So the question is, after so many people came into the streets, what happens next? And if you actually look at articles and at activist communications, the main suggestion is for people to actually start supporting more already existing women's campaigns and women's organizations. So it's good for mobilization, but then to build a sustainable organization, you also need different media and a different kind of structure as well. Social change is very complex. It takes a long time for social change to happen. So it is very difficult to think of one mobilization, in this particular case the Women's March, which I don't think you can call it a campaign. I think it was one kind of like protest demonstration, as bringing social change. And we will also have to assess it with a long-term perspective. But something that may have changed is that a lot of people were activated, a lot of people were brought in contact with others who were interested in the same issues, possibly in their own locality. So it would be interesting to see whether these people continue to be active and what happens next, and whether that was a moment where some people became activists effectively. But I think that it's too early to say for something like the Women's March. Social change, unfortunately, takes a long time to happen, and it is very, very difficult to predict.
It raises consciousness, it gives people a chance to be together and discuss what's going on and to plan ways forward, ways of being active in kind of rejecting all these things.
I'm sick and tired of inequality, basically. Equality suits everyone. What is wrong with that? I don't understand why we can't all bring ourselves along together for the greater good, really.
2 weeks ago we were excited at 6,000, 7,000. Now there's 30,000, 40,000 here. It's incredible.
The success of Women's March has showed female power during the participation in civic issues, which also point out feminist criticism towards Habermas. The concept of public sphere has lack of consideration of female and minorities. The rise of social networking sites has resulted in public discussions on digital platforms. As the social tools are dramatically improving our ability to share, cooperate, and acting together, the well use of social media would help to activate more people and encourage them to protect their civic rights, which would eventually lead to a better public sphere.